Good afternoon, everyone. Good evening, depending on where you are. I'm Ethan Evans. I'm here to talk about how to build executive presence. We do this class in two ways. I give you my straight human answers. We also use an AI I've built and that is accessible to you. So since we have a lot to cover, many of you know me, but some of you don't. My quick bio in one slide. I'm educated as an engineer. I spent 12 years in various startups on the US East Coast. I was then recruited by Amazon, where I spent 15 years as a senior manager, then a director, then a vice president. I worked on Prime Video. I worked at the acquired company Twitch. I helped start Prime Gaming. I retired in the fall of 2020, almost 5 years ago, to become a coach, writer, and teacher. And that's enough about me. You'll be able to find me if you haven't online. So for part of this class, we use a custom GPT, a member of my community helped me build. It's trained on over 500,000 words, basically everything I've written since I left Amazon, everything I've recorded, the transcripts, and it works really well. People who use it tell me it works really well. Now, to use it, you have to have some sort of premium OpenAI ChatGPT access. But I get nothing from that. I'm not selling you anything. It's free from me. So if you pay the $20 to ChatGPT to use ChatGPT, you get free access to this. You can get all the information by joining my newsletter. The newsletter also has a free option. It happens to be on sale right now for Prime Days if you want to pay for the paid version, but you do not need to. You can go sign up for free and get access to EthanGPT. So let's move on to the point, but I'm telling you how to get into the tool we're going to use if you want to now or later. So what we did today is we have 3 questions we took that were pre-submitted by members of my community on the topic of how to build executive presence. We took them pre-submitted so that we have examples to use. And we're going to do that. Then we're going to take audience questions. And the way we do that is within Zoom, you should have the ability to go into the Q&A tool and both enter a question that you would like me to answer about executive presence. And this is important. There's 250 of you here live right now. You can upvote on what question you want. Interesting. Jason, we need to switch the host from you to me because it's capping out people at your host capacity. So, sorry for that, folks. We have a lot of people who want it in, and we're approaching the limit on Jason's Zoom license. I have a bigger license.
All right, so, Ethan, it's done. You're host. But make me co-host just as a backup.
Yeah, hopefully that will solve the problem. Sorry for the administrivia, folks. But I don't know if it's because you started the meeting or maybe even you scheduled it. I don't know if the license we bought is going to matter. It's offering me the choice to buy another. I'm going to ignore it. If we get to $299, maybe you can do something about it in the background because I want to focus on the audience here and teaching. So first point is go into the Zoom Q&A tool, put in your questions, and then upvote the ones you want me to answer because we're going to have time for a couple. Straight to the point. The first question we got was, how do I avoid coming off as defensive when challenged by executives in high-stakes meetings? This is a common problem. You get asked a hard question. You get asked a question that you have a good answer to, but the answer involves another team or can sound like an excuse, because what questions do we executives ask? We ask questions about problems normally. We rarely ask softball questions like, why are your results so great? And why are you such an awesome leader? Right? We always ask questions like, why is this goal red? And what are you doing about it? And how did it get that way? Well, it's hard not to answer that defensively because the way I phrase the question is an accusation. So let's take a look at 2 things real quick. The first is I put this question in to EthanGPT. I haven't actually looked at what it will answer. And if you know how AI works, it's going to answer things differently every time. So this is what my GPT is advising. I've never seen this before, so we're going to evaluate it together. It's saying pause and breathe, acknowledge the question. Even if you don't agree, start by affirming. That's a good point. I see where you're coming from. This disarms tension. That's right. If you immediately start by saying that's not right, then you're in a fight. It's also true you can take a moment to think about it. You have to respond quickly, but not instantly. You can clarify. So you can say, let me make sure I understand. So you're asking why we're late or why is the project late? I'm going to answer that in terms of why is the overall project late? And that involves more than just my team, would be a reframing there. Stick to facts, not feelings. Okay, this is good advice. I consider it fairly generic. Now this is ChatGPT wanting, to coach back and ask some more questions. The real point we wanted to make is if you want to use a tool to get good answers to this question, and then I will give you my answer next, the same guy who helped us build the tool helped us re-engineer the prompt. So we're going to use the modified prompt that gives a lot more detail, right? How do I avoid coming off when challenged, for example, and he made up an example. And then the point of a deeper prompt is garbage in, garbage out. The better question you ask of GPT, the better answer you're going to get. And so here you can see GPT is now responding with specific sample language, which it didn't do any of that in this example. It has a little bit in there, like little tiny bits, but it totally asking a better question. And by the way, I didn't test this either. This is not a canned demo. This is live. It's totally changed the quality and comprehensiveness of the answer. So here's your first executive presence lesson, not relating to ChatGPT. The better question you ask of GPT or in a meeting, the higher quality your question, the more thoughtful it is, the more you've put into the context, the better result you'll get in a live meeting as well as in a GPT prompt. So what do I actually think myself? What would I add to what chat is saying here? What I would add to this original question of how do I avoid feeling or sounding defensive is you're being put on the defense. You're being put in a position to defend something. The way to avoid feeling defensive is to refuse that framing, at least inside yourself. So the way to avoid feeling like you're put on the defensive is to say, you know what, I own my project, I'm doing good work. This person is coming at me, but I'm comfortable and I'm going to answer factually and calmly. And only if I start to let myself feel attacked am I going to sound defensive. Because if you feel like, oh yeah, good question, that's totally disarming. If somebody says, why are you late? What did you screw up? You could say, hey, good question. It's reasonable to think, what did I screw up? I get why you would think that. But that's not true. And here's the alternative. Or turns out we didn't screw anything up. Here's what we discovered. And here's what this other team's problem are. But it's a matter of what framing you accept. If you accept the framing that the executive gets to interrogate and you're the sucker on the far end, that's where we're at. So Jason, we'll have to debug for the future. It's telling me we're at the limit and the only thing to do is buy a larger capacity, which I already did. So I don't want to take time to try and do that while we have people here. So the 300 of you who are here are the lucky ones who got in before we hit a meeting capacity problem. Congratulations. And to people watching this tape later who couldn't get in, Sorry, that's a Zoom thing. Our bad. So that's how I would handle it. I would handle this question ideally by, as opposed to resisting the question, say, that's a good question. If I were you, I'd naturally worry about that. Let me tell you what I think about it. And then you've made it into a conversation, but where you reject the framing that you have to defend something. Instead, you're just talking about it. And that's what exudes executive confidence is, hey, you came at me and it bounced off me like nothing. And now I'm just going to talk to you like a regular person. You sound defensive when you feel defensive. It's tough to do. It's tough to exude that confidence or to decide. And what I would say is go into the meeting ahead of time, asking yourself, if I get a hard question or if someone comes at me, how am I going to choose to respond? So that when it happens, you can pull this trick where you say, hey, you know what? I knew this was coming. You don't say this out loud, but I knew this hard question was coming and I'm ready for it. So no problem. I saw this coming. I'm going to stun them with my witty reply. Okay. Few things about why this prompt was better. It provides more context. It clarifies the dynamics. It surfaces the tension, dependency versus blame. These are just showing you how we can get more out of the tools. And why am I giving you these tools? Well, there's 300 of you here. More apparently aren't going to be able to be here, which is tragic. We can't possibly answer all your questions live, but GPT works 24/7 and you can get them all answered there. So let's test another question. Then we'll get to some of the ones you're voting on. And, there are 300 people here. No question has more than 4 votes. So I always have to remind people, if you want to control what I answer, you do have to go into the Q&A tool and actually vote. Meanwhile, I'm a senior manager in a FANG company. I want to make an impression during the few meetings I have with senior executives. In these meetings, how do I show and communicate that I'm thinking strategically on a wider level versus just my own org? So this is another big part of executive presence. How can I show up as a big thought leader when mostly what people want is a status report just on my org? So what do? Well, okay, so this is the nice affirming part of chat. It's saying, oh, good question. That's useless. But this part's right. The default trap people fall into is reporting results and never linking their work to the broader company or impact. So this is the key. If you want to be seen as a thought leader, you have to talk about how your team's work, which is what they're here about, is contributing to some larger strategic goal that they care about. So you need to know what are their goals. So the advice here is actually pretty good. Start with the so what, in terms of company priority or customer outcome. You can talk about other teams you worked with because that links you to a bigger whole, right? It's true SVPs care about alignment and cross-functional execution because that's all in their org. And as it says here, this tells them you're not operating in a silo. So this is actually a pretty good answer from the tool. Surface strategic risks. Talk about where there are problems that may arise beyond your group as well as what they can do. Don't just raise questions, give answers or suggestions. There's something everyone likes to hear when I talk about executive presence. It's a 6-word saying, be clear, be quick, be gone. So you want to say what you need to say it succinctly, and then not just hang around obviously wanting more face time. So be crisp, be clear, or be crisp, be quick, be gone is another way to say it. But here it said be concise and confident. Lots of words don't impress anyone. Instead, make your point and ask, does that answer your question? Or do you have any questions? Because executives love to ask questions and they love to hold some of the airtime. So if you want to impress them, give them something worth debating and then give them a chance to participate. Because if you want to build relationship with them, you have to have a conversation. You can't impress them only by talking at them. This is actually one of the things I struggle with in a Zoom like this. I'm in a situation where there's too many of you for me to talk to one-on-one, so I have to talk at you, which makes it harder to build a relationship. And it's why I encourage you to ask me good questions in the Q&A tool, because at least there I'm taking something back from you that you've all voted on. So real quick, how might we improve this prompt to get even better answers? Well, here's what our team's prompt expert created. It's a little bit more of a paragraph and less points. Let's see what we get from that. Another supportive quote. Thank you, chat. We feel good. But again, you see it giving you, here's what you want to get chat to do, right? Is let me give you a framework and reusable tools you can walk into the room with. So the coaching model can actually teach you. And why is that, right? Give me some hard-hitting reusable questions to elevate any program we review. This is, you've asked for it, so chat's responding with what you want. Hard-hitting reusable questions. Of course, you can cherry pick from this, right? These are discussion starters. You're in this meeting. What are you going to ask the executives that's going to get them to engage with you and see you as a thinking person, not just a drone who reports to them? That's what you want, is you want to create conversation without asking things that have no context. You want to make these even more specific, right? What does success look like? How could we be more aggressive? A great one is, how much risk do you want me to take? You know, how much is it okay to have a misstep if that helps us go faster? Those are good questions. So the bottom line question the original asker wanted is, I want to make an impression. You make an impression by telling them something they haven't heard or asking them a question they haven't thought of, and then helping them answer it so they feel safe, right? You don't just want to throw a bomb in the room and see what happens. You want to throw a controlled explosion that gets their attention, and then you can help them resolve. So bring new ideas, not just reports. At the same time, you have to be on top of all your facts, because if they just want to drill on facts, you do have to be able to answer those to have the credibility to ask a question. Even if all they want are facts and they say, hey, Ethan, we're done with your section now, we're going to move on. Or they say, okay, let's move on to Jason's piece. You can say, well, hold on, I don't want to move on. Or I have a question. Can I ask a question before we move on? And that's where you put in your new idea. You have to be a little bit assertive to hold your airspace. The same guy who built this tool calls that being strategically annoying. Being willing to annoy people just a little at the right moments to get your point across. What made this modified prompt better? It's specific, strategic, etc. Importantly, I think it asks the tool to do something for you. We're going to do one more question, then I will go into live questions for a while. So if you haven't put those in to our Q&A tool or voted on them, you've got one more question worth of time to do it. And I see some of you are talking in chat. You can answer each other, but I can't read that and do this at the same time. What's the best way to recover when I stumble in an important executive level presentation or get a question I can't answer? Okay, this is classic executive presence. What do I do when things go wrong? So first, a stumble is very recoverable. You can literally say something as simple as, you know, I'm going to restart this answer. I have better information for you. You just own it, say it. Why do you say it at all? You say, you know, I'm going to restart this because I've thought of something else. And you restart. And as long as you only do it once, you look like you're in control. people understand that sometimes a new idea occurs to you. The other thing I would say is try to avoid a stumble by taking just a pause to frame in your mind. But if you've made a stumble, that's how you recover. We'll scroll through the answer here in a second. You can see how well what I said matches up to what the tool recommends. Second, what if I get a question I can't answer? Well, if you can't answer it, you can't answer it. Don't bullshit. Don't get caught. Instead, simply say, you know, I don't have that right now. I will get it back to you by the end of the day. Or let's move on in the meeting and I'll see if I can get that answered before the end of the meeting. If you're in a really important executive meeting, you should have your team not waiting and doing nothing for you, but with their phones available or on Slack or whatever you use to say, hey, if I get zinged with a question we don't know, I'm going to Slack it out to all of you and I need you to jump on it so that we can recover by the end of the meeting. And then your team in the background or your peers, if you don't have a team, I know some of you don't lead teams. If you don't have a team, you have to do that separately. So, okay. So what else does this say? Then when you stumble or misspeak, yeah, let me rephrase that. This is exactly what I told you, right? So if nothing else, I hadn't read this, you saw I hadn't scrolled down, you can see that the tool represents me accurately. So if you like my style of advice, it clearly gives you that. I also agree with this. I said, don't over apologize. Say it, then move on. If you don't know the answer, yep, what I tell you, I'll follow up by time frame. So this tool lets you ask your exact questions and get my answers pretty 100%. Directionally, you know, again, I'll confirm with my team. Follow up fast. That's how you earn trust. This is exactly correct. So I'm going to skip, because I want to go to some of your live questions, I'm going to skip going through another version of this and why our prompt engineer feels it better. I am going to cover one thing real quick. It's Prime Days. We're giving discounts on a bunch of our stuff. So the newsletter is discounted through tomorrow. My video on demand courses, our 3 live cohort courses where, real quick, Jason and I teach on how to get promoted early in your career. I teach my best known course, Stuck at Senior Manager. It starts not this weekend, but next weekend. So this course starts this weekend. My course starts next Friday. And then in the fall, we teach all the way up to getting into the C-suite. I teach with my old executive coach, just 50 director level and up leaders on how to break into a CXO role. So Jason will no doubt put those links in chat if he hasn't already. They're all here. You can find them elsewhere on my LinkedIn or in my newsletter. Meanwhile, I'm going to take the most popular question from chat. I'm going to read it out, and we're going to answer a few of these, which I've never seen before. So the first question is, how can I maintain executive presence in a room full of big personalities? Meaning those who are aggressive and constantly talking to prove their ambition. And I'm the quiet, thoughtful one. So first, I would recommend you follow a leader named David Markley, who's a friend of mine, and he's building a class on exactly this, which is how to be a quiet leader. And he's actually creating a website and a brand around quiet leadership because he's an introvert and he's had to walk this journey himself. The second thing you can do is you can read a book that's simply called Quiet, and it will give you some ideas. But this one's tricky for me because I'm more the person who's your problem, right? I'm the louder, bigger personality who's willing to interrupt people and talk over people. So how do you deal with someone like me? Well, one trick that Zoom has helped you with is just put your hand up. It's a universal signal everybody knows from grade school. And because of Zoom and virtual hands and people raising their hand in Zoom windows, most people know like that means you want to say something and they will shut up and give you a chance eventually. And so signal it non-verbally. The second classic trick is to put someone else in the room who's louder, or to ally with someone who's louder and have them prompt you. And so let's say my co-host Jason is the quiet one and he has me as an ally. He can look at me or give me a sign or send me a text message, say, hey, I got something to say. And I can say, I can do the interrupting. I say, hey, you know what? Jason's the expert on this. Let's hear what he has to say. And then he has the stage and he didn't even have to do it. Now, you have to have an ally who will do that for you, but you can create that alliance. So put your hand up, have an ally. The third thing is you may have to develop the skill of interrupting or of choosing. You say you're the quiet and thoughtful one. That's great. But what quiet and thoughtful ones often do is they think, well, I'll only say this if no one else does. And so they wait through the whole meeting seeing if someone else is going to say it, and then it's too late. So a great tool I was taught here is give yourself a scorecard and say, I'm going to force myself to speak 3 times early in the meeting, and then I can start sitting back. The truth is, US and many Western business cultures are aggressive and talkative. And if you want to be seen as a leader there, you do have to find a way to make yourself heard. You don't need to be loud when you're heard. You don't need to be rude. You don't need to go on at tremendous lengths, but you can't be completely silent. That won't work. The last option is follow up in writing after the meeting, but it's a weaker option if the decision has been made. So let's see what ChatGPT pops up. Yep, decide when you will speak. So I just said that, right? Decide, pick your moment. You must contribute, I said 3, but at least one thing. Claim your space visually. Executive presence is as much nonverbal and visual. Sit up, make eye contact, don't shrink or withdraw, don't fidget and stare at your notes. Being quiet and being withdrawn or sitting not at the table but against the wall, those are different things. And I know as an introvert, you may be more comfortable that way, but you can't do it. Questions. If you don't want to make a statement, ask a question. Figure out a good question, not a zinger, a real legitimate question, and ask it. And if somebody says, does anyone have any questions, have your question ready so that you can jump in before the other loudmouths do. Don't apologize, right? Don't. This is classic advice for everything about executive presence. Fewer words, more confidently. Why does Twitter work? Why are tweets a thing? Because short, powerful phrases resonate. And the clever thing about the original Twitter was it forced people to boil down an idea to 140 characters and make it count. Well, if you don't like to talk a lot, start to ask, if I only get one tweet in this meeting, what's it going to be? And you can also, again, it says if you follow up with in writing. So, all right, those are good answers. I'm going to take another question from the Q&A list, and we'll do a couple more. These are good questions. If you want to change the voting, there are 300 of you here. No question has more than 25 votes. So 275 of you are doing that lean back, don't say anything. And that's why you don't have executive presence, because you have an opportunity to drive what I answer and you're not bothering because you'd rather sit quietly and passively. As a case in point, that's not going to work for you as a leader, right? Instead, you put your question in and then you go over to chat and you try and rally people, vote for my question, right? That's the aggressive way. That's what works. Strategically annoying. Go annoy a few of your other people in chat. You don't know them. You won't know them tomorrow, right? Most of them. So why not annoy a few of them and ask for votes for your question? You see even if you don't do it, you see the point? Having executive presence is a behavior. And so you have to behave in that pattern. And God knows right now, at least in the US, but also globally, we are more and more led. Our examples of leadership are loud, outspoken people, deal makers, right? That's who we're around. People with loud voices, big stage presences, dramatic actions, over the top declarations. You may not like that. You may despise it, but that is an image of our leadership culture, right? How did we pick a president, right? The last guy got tossed out on his ear because he looked old and feeble in a debate. He showed up to a debate and he couldn't hold his own with someone more vigorous and louder, and he was gone. You don't have to like that, and you may not live in the US, you may have a different model of things, but there is a valuable example there. Okay. How do you demonstrate executive presence in a Zoom interview? Being a South Asian woman, irrespective of holding titles, I still haven't mastered the art of executive presence. Looking for actionable strategies. So this was not meant to be an ad, but I can't help doing this. 1 second. There's a book on exactly this. I don't know if it's showing up. Hopefully it does. It's Lorraine K. Lee, Unforgettable Presence, and it's got a whole chapter or more about how to build your Zoom presence. I've done a talk with Lorraine. Maybe Jason can link to it in the chat, but it's all about how to be seen, and it's written by, surprise, surprise, an Asian woman. So your answer is literally in this book by someone who shares the challenges. Okay, so how's that for live and interactive? Let's see what chat says, and then we'll see who voted on more questions after being passivity shamed, which I'm not afraid to do. What else? Okay, executive presence is not about these things. It's real. That's true. It can be learned and practiced, even on Zoom. That is also true. Executive presence is a learnable skill. It can be decomposed into about a dozen component skills. Speaking ability is only part of it. Your track record does count. Remember, we listen to people like Warren Buffett. Why do we listen to him? If you think of Warren Buffett, most of you know who he is, right? The CEO of Berkshire Hathaway. He's not known for any kind of showmanship or for his dramatic presentation. People go and listen to him because of what he's done and his factual information. So go that way. If you want to build executive presence, pick a model of someone who's doing it based on their accomplishments. Let's see what else is in here. What is executive presence really? It's being calm and confident. It's being decisive and strategic. It's not only being a great speaker, and people confuse that presence is only speaking. It's being calm in a crisis. It's being able to build relationships with your peers and instill trust when they're skeptical. This is in a list of what to do in a Zoom context, right? Own your frame, fill the frame, be big on Zoom, have a good microphone, have all of that technology working for you. Go in calm, pre-plan when you can, makes sense. It's always easier to be prepared, right? The hardest type of executive presence is when you're being blindsided by something that you could not anticipate. And that is a good test of executive presence. But if that's not your sweet spot, the reacting quickly, fine. You'll suck at that sometimes, but be really good at all the other stuff. And on average, people will think you have executive presence. speak like an executive, concise, declarative, pauses, all this other stuff. Stay at a high level, business outcomes, not just actions. So focus on what matters to the business. Don't discuss minutia unless a detail is needed. Be warm. People react to your body language. So if you look afraid or if you look low confidence, if you're not confident in yourself, why would I be confident in you, is how I phrase this. If you're not in the room and feeling like you belong there or acting like you belong there, why would I think you belong there? Because hell, you don't think you belong, so why should I? That's just normal, and you've got to get around it. Practice, you can always record yourself in practice. So let me see what else we have. Thank you all for being here. We'll answer a couple more. I'm lucky enough, I think, to have a fire alarm. Not a fire alarm. One of my smoke detectors is now beeping in the background. So that's a good executive presence tool of, can I do a good job staying focused and teaching you while I'm wondering when my kids are going to bust in on camera and say, hey, what's this beeping? But that's okay. If that happens, I'll manage it in real time. And otherwise, I'll go figure out why there's beeping in my house later. And so you won't hear any more about it now. I've covered it. I'll move on. So this question was, how can I establish executive presence and be seen as a leader as a newcomer, especially in a company where employees have been there 10 plus years and have a reputation for bullying new hires? Wow. Huh. I guess my first question to you, whoever wrote this, is why did you join a company where they have this reputation for bullying new hires? But second, you have to stand up to bullies. So let me tell you a story. This guy's a good friend of mine. He would not appreciate me characterizing him as a bully, but that's okay. I'm going to do it anyway in this case. There was a reorg, and I was leading the tech of a particular group in Amazon, and a new director got assigned to own the business and the product. And he came to me, he came into our office. He was just moving into a new office that had been vacated by the guy who was just reorged out of it. And he came to me, I went to see him, and he said, hey, I'm Ethan. I run, the tech. I run the engineering team. I'm glad to meet you, et cetera. And he said, my name's whatever. I'm not going to name him, but my name's Fred, not his real name. And nice to meet you, but I don't understand why you're here. I've always run my own tech teams. Now, that's a pretty hostile bullying thing, and he literally said it within the first couple sentences of meeting me. He was just being honest. From his viewpoint, he was used to leading his own tech teams. Why the hell was I there as a peer? Why didn't he have control of his resources? But it was rude as shit. So I could have responded with any number of things. I could have said, oh, okay, well, I don't know. I could have been weak. I could have said, well, screw you, buddy. You're the newcomer here. Why don't I run your stuff? Instead, I said, well, I am here, but I'm good at what I do, and you'll find I'm easy to work with. Let's talk about how I can help you. And I just took it in stride. I resisted the bullying, asserted my own value, my own expertise, as well as my right to be there, and then transitioned it to, this is the reality. I'm here. I'm valuable. What are you going to do? Right? What's going to be different? And so I just pivoted the topic onto, let's collaborate. In this case, how do you establish executive presence? You have to push back on the bullies and show your value. But you have to begin from a belief that you have value to bring. And I guess if there's any one thing I was ever born with, it's the hubris or pride to believe that I can make some contribution to almost any group. Do you have the internal confidence to believe that you can add something to this group? If you do, you'll be able to. Okay. What else we got here? Let's see. Yep, signal your, so I'm showing you the chat says the same thing, so you can go use this tool. For all of you who won't get your questions answered here or who haven't submitted them, I'm just demonstrating over and over that the GPT tool we built will give you pretty good answers. So, right? You don't need to know everything yet to project authority, but you do need to act like someone who belongs. That's the key. You've got to own it like you get to be there, and don't sabotage yourself with, oh, sorry, I'm new, or sorry, I don't know, but maybe. If you sound weak, you'll be weak. Set boundaries early without drama. Bullying thrives on testing how much you'll tolerate. Let me finish my point. I hear you, etc. And then go for quick wins. Show your value soon. Reframe your newness as strength. Good idea. Build some allies. All right, let me see what else we got for questions. Okay, we've got another one with a lot of votes. I'll answer one or two more. I'll stop before the end of the hour. Okay, we have a very short question. There isn't a lot of context here. But the short question is, how do I demonstrate executive presence during interviews for a new job? Executive presence is a lot, in this case, executive presence is 10% appearance. This is research from Sylvia Ann Hewlett, who wrote a book on executive presence called Executive Presence. You can go get that book if you want. She says, based on her research, that executive presence is 10% appearance, 30% communication, 60% gravitas. Gravitas is your accomplishments. It's the Warren Buffett part. It's your career. It's all your significance and solidity. The problem you have here is, how do I demonstrate that in an interview? Well, the first thing that's true is you got to look the part, because people are first going to judge you on your appearance. So I'm on camera. I've controlled the lighting. I have the nice mic. I put on the collared shirt. The truth is, I'm sitting here in gym shorts with bare feet, but none of you know that, right? I could be all dressed in dress shoes. Maybe I'm even lying to you and I actually have dress shoes on. The point is, though, you've got to convey the part of being an executive. And that begins, people judge first by what they see on the screen. You don't have to look some specific way. The research shows you have to look neat and put together. That's all. So you don't have to totally fit in. But if you are a person who's got, say, a lot of facial piercings or very visible tattoos, or you insist on dressing in an unusual way, then your only path forward is to make that part of your presence and own it with confidence. Otherwise, the easiest thing to do is put on the collared shirt and fit the part. Second, interviews are then about communication, but communication is more than speaking. It's body language. Do you lean in? It's pausing and having cadence. It's hand gestures. Are you expressing yourself? Do you make welcoming gestures? It's great to meet you. It's different than, oh, hi, nice to meet you. Beyond all of those things, it's then, can you turn the interview into a conversation where you come off as interested in the job, but not needy for the job? You want the job, but if you don't get it, or you're not a fit, or you don't think they're good enough, you're totally fine if you walk away. The key to executive presence is coming in as an equal and having a conversation about, does Acme Inc., where you're interviewing, fit you? And do you fit Acme Inc.? It's a two-way discussion. That's how you demonstrate presence in an interview. If you come in with, "Oh, I'm really excited about your company. What can I do to what questions can I answer for you?" and you're totally submissive, you won't get anywhere. You won't, get nearly as far. Okay. I'm going to do one more question. There are two that have 17 votes. I'm just going to see which one I like better. So one of them is about quickly establishing trust, and one of them is about people who like to take advantage of a power imbalance. I'll answer the power imbalance one super quickly verbally. Don't play that. If that's who you're working for, go find a better company or stand up to the bully. Once you start letting people use their power to shut you down, you're in a losing place you'll never get out of. So let's look at how to quickly establish trust with an executive audience when meeting for the first time. Do your homework. Know something about them. Second, have someone else who's there with you who does know them introduce you. So, for example, I mentioned Jason, my chief operating officer, when we started this discussion, and I said, we're partners in teaching and in this business. That lent him my credibility. Since it's my name, you know me, but now you know him. So if he chimes in or speaks or does something in chat, you know, oh, that's an extension of Ethan. He's part of the team. Try and get someone to lend you some credibility. Have your boss introduce you. Have a customer contact introduce you. Don't, if you can avoid it, go in ice cold where you have to be the person who does everything on your own. The rest of this follows the same recipe as the interview. Have your appearance fit the role so that people aren't hung up on your appearance. Then communicate clearly, honestly, energetically, but as a peer, and then impress them as you communicate with the depth of your prepared material. And this is the last point. I'll close today's discussion. Almost none of us finds ourselves in an executive meeting we didn't know was coming. We almost always have the chance to prepare and be on top of our material. If you don't do that, you're taking a knife to a gunfight. Go in knowing your stuff and being confident that you know your stuff and that your team or your peers are behind you. And if you go in envisioning that you're going to fit in the meeting and that you belong there and that you have value to bring, that's very different than if you go in with, oh shit, it's our annual executive review. I hope they don't cut our budget. How the mind you carry in comes through in your presence very strongly. All right. So with that, sorry to anyone who had to watch this on a recording who planned on attending live. Technical malfunction on my end. We'll fix that for next time. For everyone else, I hope you got a lot out of this. One more time over here. If you want to find me, you can find me on LinkedIn, Ethan EthanGPT. You can find me at my website, ethanevans.com. And if there's stuff I do that you want, it's on sale through tomorrow, through Prime Day. The links were in the chat. They're also available in my newsletter, which is where you can get the tool I've shown you work. Why did I build the tool? It's because I can't coach all 2,000 people who signed up to eventually hear this lesson live. But GPT lets me scale to all of you, and the video should be pretty convincing that it's above average advice. So I hope that helps you. Thank you all very much.